Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
Does anyone here remember after-school specials? Oh, good. So there was like some issue that was happening. So I only have a vague memory of what the issue was. It was a little girl, and there was something happening. By the way, for those who didn't know, it was like on ABC, and it was for kids when you come home after school, and there was some issue that a kid might be going through. So this was I don't remember the story. I just remember there was something this little girl was going through, and I was just I wanted her to overcome it. And I remember at the very end, she's running like in a race, and there was like all these obstacles to keep her from, in her own self, about not finishing. And I just remember going, you can do it, don't give up, don't give up. I got so invested in like, please don't give up, I know you can do it. And then she does it in the elation. And just think of how many stories that we see and know that do that for us. Growing up, I feel like I've grown up being Julian's mom, but being his parent, we've watched a lot of sports movies, and every time we watch those sports, there's that moment where you're just like, they go beyond what you think they can do. Art does that. When someone does a beautiful painting, oh man, when I read some of your poetry, the gift you have of language, it opens us up. Anything, a scientific invention, something that just pushes beyond, maybe not all human boundary, but you know someone specifically and personally, and you know they've just pushed past a boundary, a limit that sort of defined them for so long, and then suddenly they moved past it. Don't you feel this extraordinary like rush of joy and exhilaration? Because we've moved just beyond a limitation. And what I believe is that's just a reflection of what this infinite spirit that Lynn so beautifully read about this morning is constantly, because it's infinite. And so we all have this divine impulsion within us to move beyond where we've been before. And we might say that's the masculine energy. So happy Father's Day. We all have masculine and feminine energy, as I've talked about before, and there's a spectrum. And so we're just honoring that part of the spectrum that is the masculine energy, and that masculine energy that is about driving forward. What can that look like? Well, it wants to change things. So there's this great video, it made the rounds on Facebook several years ago, so you may have seen it, but it still makes me chuckle, where it's a guy and a girl talking about their relationship, or they're just talking. She's explaining to him how stressful her work is and how stressful her life is, and he's looking at her, and she's just going, you don't understand. It is just so stressful. It's like I have this constant headache because of the stress. Like some of you know this video, and he's like, it's like the stress. It's like having a nail in your head. It hurt. And he's going, well, honey. And he's like, she goes, no, don't interrupt me. I don't need you to fix it. I'm not asking you to tell me what to do. I'm just asking you to hear me. I'm telling you that what I'm feeling is really painful. It feels like there's a nail in my head. And he keeps trying to interrupt her. She keeps stopping. And then the video ends with her turning, and she has a big nail in her head. There is a place for support and for love and compassion, but there's also a place for doing things, for actually making changes. And that's where the masculine energy, and of course they work together really well. But we do need to feel the power of love and feel it in our life. And we are here on an evolutionary basis. We are here to grow. We are here to continually evolve, and that never stops until the day, well, at least until we leave this body, but I think it's forever, at least, in many different dimensions of time and space. But there's this evolutionary impulse that we feel to push our way forward, and that masculine energy, our beautiful men know this, and many of us women, and we might have had people in our lives that have supported us with that masculine energy to push back our boundaries, past our boundaries. So a personal example is pretty easy for me, because as I probably have mentioned 1,000 times, I come from a very male family. I have 3 older brothers, my mom and dad. My mom threw out her back once This is back in the 90s. So I remember, or 80s. And so she couldn't get out of bed, which is unusual because she's like, brrr. So we lied on her, and we were going through Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. So whenever that book came out. And I haven't seen it since then, but my memory is that there was they would give a problem, and then they'd have a masculine response and then a feminine response. And we were going through it page after page, and every single page she answered like the masculine. And I just thought, oh my gosh, when I started therapy years ago, I literally said to my therapist, I feel like in my family I come from another planet. Turns out I did. My whole family's Mars, and I was a Venus. So I have this incredibly masculine drive forward. So what that meant for me, because I didn't have any of these labels, for which I'm thankful, which is, by the way, why I really dislike labels. I didn't have any labels that I'm an introvert or people said I was shy, but I didn't identify with anything, particularly because I constantly had a family that didn't limit me by that. No, you can do it. No, they was pushing me out the door. You can do it. My brother, who was closest to me in age, he was here once. He was Rob. He was here as a yoga teacher. We were very close, except for his rebellious middle school years. But other than that, when we were kids in high school, always by my side, always saying, you can do that. Here, you can do it. So I did very physical things that I wouldn't have done, but because he was always saying, you can do this, here, you can do this. And so I started to believe in myself. This is why I don't like labels, because I would have thought, well, I can't do this because this is not my personality type. But nobody knew my personality type, so they were pushing past my habit patterns when I was in high school. So I will tell you one label that I'm comfortable with, which is introversion. And the reason why I'm comfortable with it, because it doesn't own me. I know that I get recharged by myself when I'm by myself, but it doesn't have to own me. And the reason why it doesn't own me is because of my brother. Because in high school, there were always parties. I always wanted to stay at home. He was a year old. He was in class above me. Come on, Harriet, let's go. I'm not going. So I would go tell on him to my parents. Rob is trying to make me go out. And my mom and dad would be like, yeah, you should go out. And my own parents are betraying me. And so he would take me to these parties. He'd introduce me to everybody. There was no hiding. And I learned how to be sociable. I learned how to enjoy being extroverted, even though that was not my natural self. And still, I would say, I still get charged up by myself, but I've learned to deeply enjoy being with other people and miss it when I don't have it. When I first became a minister, I think you all know me a little bit better now, but when I first became a minister, people thought I was an extrovert because I would come alive when I'm around people. That was something because I was with this highly masculine energy family. They didn't acknowledge my limits. And I always thought, what if I had been in a family that really sort of coddled me with like, oh, okay, you don't have to go out, you don't have, I would have become this total recluse. So that's the power of masculine energy. Now we need it with feminine energy. I needed the love and the tenderness too. And I got that from God. But that the pushing, I'm forever grateful because it constantly, and it's not over. We all have that energy beside us. So have some friends in our lives that are pushing us past what we think we're capable of, who say, yes, I hear that you feel like this is who you are and that you can't go past that, but I believe you can. And that can get irritating. Well, no. I remember we got in this whole argument because I met a friend when I was at Agape, I hate it when people say, I can't do this because it's who I am. He said, what a limitation. I said, well, maybe, my feminine self, well, maybe that is part of who they are, and we should respect that. And he's like, yeah, but not if it's limiting them. And he's just like, try. And of course, it's both. So looking at your life, looking where you are now, where are you presently? Where do you stand on everything, just in your head, and the things that matter to you the most? Especially. Are you working on accepting, because that's beautiful energy, the immanent energy of seeing the presence and the power in, through it as everything, and honoring it and seeing it and loving it, because spirit is already whole, perfect, and complete. Spirit does not need to strive. Spirit's already there. but in the individualized expression as each and every one of us. We are here to express in that unique way. That's why we're on this planet. Spirit doesn't need to, it's already there. But it has chosen, this goes back to our very first Sunday in June, choosing to be chosen. We are all chosen, 8 billion people of us, plants, animals, we're chosen to be here. We just have to choose to believe that we're chosen, because then we start realizing there's a significance to our life, that we have a calling, and that calling is exactly what birthed us to be here. Nobody can show up the way each and every one of us show up uniquely here. And so the striving is to fulfill our highest potential on every level and dimension of our beingness, because it brings so much joy. Just like the joy that we feel when we see it in somebody else, when they've just gone past a boundary that seemed impossible, and yet they did that, and you're just, yes! We need to do that with our own life. We need to believe that all these ideas that we have about ourselves, as Lynn said in the reading today, they're temporary. We had a beautiful meditation here with Chris's spiritual teacher yesterday, and one of her teachers is Ramana Maharshi, and I remember I was doing one of Ramana Maharshi's practices of who am I really? And for 3 weeks I was just immersed in the question of who am I, and suddenly I popped outside of my body and all I got was that you are habit patterns. And that seemed really boring, and I wanted something much more spectacular as an answer. You are a radiant light being of light, but it was just, and what that reminded me is I'm still identifying with my habit patterns. Like, I think that's who I am. And so I can't move past my boundaries or my limits if I'm so attached to my habit patterns. And the extraordinary thing is to read about all these. I love reading about monks and monkettes. I don't know what you call them. I'm reading about this amazing woman right now. But what's so extraordinary, even as they completely surrender their life, they give up everything, they move into this divine identity, they're still utterly unique. Like, we don't have to force our uniqueness. It's already there. It was birthed in us the moment we came here. So the more we open up into the infinite, it doesn't mean we just become one big bland blob. We just become like this vague infinite presence. We actually become more specifically our unique self. Isn't that an extraordinary paradoxical thing? We become more our unique self the more we become our infinite self. I'll say it again. We become more our unique self the more we identify with our infinite self. And this is the process of becoming. And so we need to actually do work. And that's an important part of this, is putting feet on our faith. Jack's song today, putting feet on our faith. In our teaching, we do a prayer process called treatment. And it's called treat and move your feet. Like, you pray, but then you go out and you do the work. You do the things that need to get done. That's, again, the masculine energy. It's not just like, oh, it just all feels so good, now I'll stay here. I feel good. Now, how am I going to show up in the world? I was trying to think of examples this morning. And so Julian walks in the room. And he goes, Mom, I just have to tell you something, because you were asking me this. And it was just perfect, so forgive me for using our family, but when it walks into your room, you should pay attention. He said, you know what Dad did for me? He said, he just made me commit. Like, if I wanted to play a sport, it was not an option to not go to practices. It was not an option to not fulfill my commitment. And I watched this year after year. Julian played 3 sports. As he continued to grow, people are dropping out of the sports. Jack said, you can drop out at the end, but you are going to finish this. And there's something about the power of finishing something. That takes us to another level. Like I always say, don't quit just as you're about to have the miracle. Well, the miracle is completion. Shunryu Suzuki says nirvana is completion. I love that. Nirvana is completion. And so the reason why I was aware of it, because I'm a little bit, well, not with my spiritual practices, but in a lot of other areas, I can be pretty lackadaisical. Like, nah, he's got a party with his friends. He needs to be with his friends. He would say that. Say, Dad, all my friends are doing this. And Jack's like, no, you made a commitment. You honor that commitment. He's telling Julian this from a little kid. It's not because you have a paycheck. It's not because you owe it to anybody else. You owe it to your team, and you owe it to yourself. So Julian was saying that's something that has been so embedded in him now that when he makes a commitment, he shows up. He shows up all the time. Not even when his friends are going out and having fun. He shows up to the commitment he made. And things happen. Things start to evolve because of that. To me, one of the most beautiful expressions of that was on Mother's Day. Julian was with his football team in Rome, Italy, and he scored a touchdown during our actual Sunday service. How cool is that? But that is that persistence. As I was saying, Julian, think of all the people you played football with in high school. How many of them are now playing in college? How many of them have scored a touchdown in Rome? And it's not because of anything spectacular other than showing up. The power of commitment, the power of consistency. All of these is masculine energy. It's not how you're feeling. You might not feel like it. You might feel sad. You might feel elated, whatever. Doesn't matter. You show up. Do you understand? So that's how we get past our limitations. That's how we rise beyond our limitations, because a lot of times those things that want to stop us are exactly what keep us locked into our limits. Because what's happened is we've hit a wall within ourselves, and so we just go, well, it's probably easier just not to do it. And we're very loving, and so that's the feminine side. Oh, that's okay, Julian. I love you. And Jack's like, no, he's going. And that's awesome. I love it, and I respect it because I know the power of it. And so look at our own lives. Just notice the people in our lives who are saying, no, please show up. If you make a commitment, show up to it. Show up to it consistently. To completion. If you made a commitment to completion, because it's not just about the completion, it's about the transformation that's happening inside of you. Because it probably, if you're really finding a resistance to it, it's because, it could be it's the wrong thing, but even if it's the wrong thing, this was the thing with Julian, and this is in your life, even if it's the wrong thing, complete what you committed to, and then you can make a change. Because but when we stop it in the middle, we don't know if we stop because we're not that interested, or because we've just hit a wall and we've convinced ourselves that it's not that important. It's not that important. I don't need to do that. I can miss my meditation practices. It's really not making that big a difference. We can find excuses for a lot of things, and there is a place for the compassion and the softness, but I do believe often in our spiritual progressive world, we tend more to the feminine because we had a lot of masculine in our lives, so we go to the feminine of the nurturing and the soft. But to remember the power, but we don't want to go so into the feminine that we forget the need and the power of the masculine. So looking at that in your own life, what does that look like? Is there any commitment that you have made or want to make, and that you might be feeling some resistance, and do you have support to help you move through that resistance? Are you wanting to push past any boundaries that you have? Are you just completely happy with your unique expression on this earth, and you have fulfilled your purpose to be here? Or do you feel that inner impulsion like, no, I have more to do. I have more to express. I have more to offer this world. Do you feel that? Do you feel that? Do you feel that? Like you have more to express. Yes, more to express in this world. And so to allow that drive to guide us, that's the directional force. So the masculine energy, the feminine energy is open and loving and accepting of all that is, and the masculine energy is directive. It's focused. It's like, that's where I want to get. Here might be my obstacles. This is why people, I think, love sports, is because here's the obstacles, and I either have to barrel through them, go around them, go above it, doesn't matter, because the key is to get to the other side. And that directional force keeps us focused on that directional force. The feminine spirit says, you're fine right where you are. You are absolutely unconditionally loved and accepted just as you are, and that's equally true. but we want both. And so it's important to honor those people, the masculine energy people in our lives, whether it's our own father or a mentor figure, a coach, and honor yourselves, for all you beautiful men and those with highly masculine energy, or have played the father role in your family. For caring and supporting us to our highest and best. I mean, that's the whole idea of a coach. I want to pull out the best from you. I believe in what you can do, or a piano teacher, or whatever. We value that masculine energy, not just as individuals, but collectively. I was listening to Jerry Seinfeld's commencement speech, which had some drama around it, but I just listened to the speech by itself, and it was actually really good. And one of the things he said, and I'm just like, you don't hear this very often, he said, why is everyone against work? What is so wrong with work? Why? He says, I find great fulfillment in work. It's what I like to do all the time. It's fulfilling because his work and his sense of purpose are all completely combined. So that's part of what I want to strive, that striving you might feel in your life right now. Like, I want to express more. If to find that in a way that is serving, that you get to do that as much as you possibly can. And that might take work. That might take changing some things in your life, it's all inner work. And not only are we doing this individually, we're doing this collectively. June is Pride Month. We have Juneteenth, which is this Wednesday. We are collectively and we have a lot of different things happening politically. We need to be collectively saying, we are so far from done. We have so much, we could do so much better than this. We can do so much better than what's happening now and what's been happening. We want, you might have heard the phrase, but it's a phrase that is part of the Centers for Spiritual Living vision statement, and it's part of other communities' vision statement. It's a world that works for everyone. The idea that this is a world that needs to be serving all of us. So there aren't people who are left out or intentionally suppressed or denied their humanity. Where all people are respected and valued. All people. We have a lot of work to do. And we're the ones to do it. We're the ones with our unique gifts and talents to come in and express. So we are collectively, as the Lighthouse, participating in consciousness, yes, and as we're moving forward, what can we do to participate it? And I'm not saying this is a whole big thing, and I'm not getting into it today, but within the Centers for Spiritual Living, and I'm sure in other organizations, do we get involved in what's happening in the world as a community, or is that everyone's individual choice? We're not getting into that part, but we know, at least in consciousness, we want to get involved. We want to be part of wherever you're working at your job, wherever you're in relationship with other people out in the community, that we're treating people equally, with loving kindness, with respect, with generosity, and seeing intentionally their unique gifts. See, when you talk to each and every individual, if you can find what is their unique gift to the world, what are they uniquely giving to me in that moment? What an incredibly generous and healing thing to do for people, because sometimes people can't see it themselves, so we get to reflect it back to them, yeah? This is the collective rising up. This is a collective energy of rising up. And so finally, I just want to end with the spiritual aspect, because spirit is always working through us in all of this. None of us are doing this by ourselves. What I'm saying, it sounds like the hard part about talking about this is like, I'm doing it. I'm rising up. I'm pushing past my limits. And it's like an egoic drive. There is an agency to it, but that agency is coming through spirit. Spirit is always rising up. Spirit is always, there's the spirit that is, and then there's a spirit that's ever evolving. And every time we connect with it, so with Yogananda, it's Kriya Yoga, it's always coming up to the third eye. Emma Curtis Hawkins, who's a New Thought teacher, always says, look up, see the energy come up. There's a reason why throughout history God has been up in the sky. Because you may have had these experiences where you suddenly feel all your energy is going up. It's ascending to a lighter place. That the experience spiritually is that sometimes when we get so caught in humanity, it's so dense, it's hard to move. But the more we move our energy up, and allow it to flow up through and as us, things become lighter. It's easier to shape shift. It's easier to change habit patterns. We become freer so we can become more available to be expressing our unique self, because we have this incredible spiritual being moving through us, expressing itself through and as each and every one of us. And so it's not just, I love Sri Aurobindo said, our job isn't just to become superhuman beings. We are very limited as human beings, all of us. We are here to become fully embodied spiritual beings in our human experience. And that's this journey that we are on. So any limits that we feel, to me, they are reflective of this ultimate one, which is we are spiritual beings, infinite in light, infinite in lightness of being, infinite in joy, infinite in peace. And we are continually bringing our energy up to feel that lightness of being, and then letting it pour through us in our unique and expressive ways. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up. We're free. Let your day and your years be full of rising up. And we're going to pray, and let's just take a moment as we turn within to think of those people in our life who have helped us rise up. Rise up when we were at our lowest point, where we felt things were impossible, where we felt there was no way out. Any time where we have felt hopeless in our life, for any number of reasons. Who or what, spiritually, humanly, what were the vehicles that supported us in rising above it, pulling us out, knowing that we could do it, that we were more than our situation, that we are more than our conditions and circumstances. We are spiritual beings. We are beings of infinite possibilities. We are beings of infinite goodness and light and joy. Who have been those people who have seen that in us and almost demanded of us to move past where we have been? Don't allow us to sink into that total despair, but into the freedom and the light of possibility. And I want you to think about, as you continue to allow these people to be animating your consciousness. And as they're animating your consciousness, think about the people you have helped push past their times of hopelessness or their limitations or their walls that seemed impossible to get past. Who have you supported? How has that masculine energy moved through you in supporting others? Just call for some of those, not out loud, but in your head, allow them to animate your being. It feels good, doesn't it? It feels good to receive, it feels good to give. And now notice that masculine, that energy that supports you in your self rising up, that self-agency, of independence, that part within you, that divine part with you that is even now pulling you and pushing you to go beyond where you've ever been before, and that you are listening to that presence. You are listening to that intuitive pull to go beyond where you ever thought you could go. That part of you that is doing this even now for yourself. Just let it be aware. Be aware of it. Let it animate your being. And so we give great thanks for the power and the presence of this divine Father God, this Father essence, this masculine loving energy in our lives, whether it has been our own father, mentors, brothers, cousins, friends, colleagues, children. That masculine energy that has supported us and been there, giving their wonderful directive, illuminating energy to support us in our growth. And we give thanks to the source of all of it. We give thanks to this divine love, this divine passion, this divine power that is moving through all creation, that is saying yes to itself all of the time through and as each and every one of us. And that we can feel it on our own and stand in our own empowerment, in our own energy and say, I can and I am becoming more than I ever thought possible. I can and I am becoming more than I ever thought possible. This is the beautiful Father energy, the highest possibility, the highest ideal of the Father energy in our life. And so for this energy, we just say thank you, thank you, thank you, God. In deep abiding gratitude and everlasting love, we just, in gratitude, let it be. And I invite you all to join me now in saying, and so it is.
I walk in God in all I do. I walk in God in all that I say.